I didn't expect to find myself back on a dating app. Not after the last disaster. But loneliness has a way of making you do stupid things at 2 a.m. I was scrolling through the usual apps, the ones everyone has, and then I saw it. An ad at the bottom of a forum. No name, just a black icon with a silver pulse. The algorithm. The tagline was simple: we find what you're actually looking for. I clicked. I didn't even have to upload a photo. It just knew. Within seconds, my phone vibrated. 5 matches. 5 nights in a row. It felt efficient, almost too easy. Most people look for red flags like a bad job or a weird ex-me. I was just looking for a connection. Someone to grab a drink with and talk about nothing. The first message came through at 2:03 a.m. It didn't say, "Hey," or "How's it going?" It just gave me a GPS coordinate and a time. I should have deleted the app right then. I should have gone to sleep and forgotten the silver pulse ever existed. But I was curious. And in the horror stories I usually tell, curiosity is the first thing that gets you killed. 5 dates. 1 week. I figured at least one of them had to be a normal person. I was wrong. Well, mostly wrong. By the time I realized the algorithm wasn't matching me with people, but with things that wanted to be people, it was already too late to log out. The first match on the app was Elias. His profile was almost too clean. No blurry gym selfies, no weird bio about loving to hike. Just a high-def headshot that looked like a magazine cover. We met at a steakhouse downtown. I got there 5 minutes early, and he was already sitting at the booth, perfectly still. He didn't look up from his water until I sat down. "You're late by 42 seconds, he said. He wasn't joking. His face didn't move. No smile, no squint. Just those pale blue eyes locked onto mine. I laughed it off, thinking he was just a guy who liked his schedule. But then the food came. I ordered a ribeye. He ordered nothing. He just sat there with his hands folded on the white tablecloth. His fingers were long and looked like they were made of polished bone. As I ate, I realized he was staring at my mouth. Every time I took a bite, his jaw would twitch. Every time I reached for my wine, he reached for his water at the exact same time. It wasn't a coincidence. It was like he was a reflection in a mirror that was running a second behind. "Aren't you hungry?" I asked. He tilted his head. It made a wet, popping sound, like a knuckle cracking in a quiet room. "I have already consumed what I require," he said. The voice didn't come from his throat. It sounded like it was coming from a speaker buried deep in his chest. It was flat. No emotion. No soul. I looked closer at his hairline. There wasn't a single stray hair. It looked painted on. And his skin, in the candlelight, I could see a faint, thin seam running from his ear down into his collar. I dropped my fork. It clattered on the floor. I reached down to grab it, and when I looked back up, he hadn't blinked. Not once in 20 minutes. "I have to go," I whispered. He didn't ask why. He didn't even move. He just watched me walk away, his eyes tracking me through the window like a security camera. He wasn't a person. He was a product. The second match was a girl named Chloe. After the steakhouse disaster, I wanted something low-key. We agreed to meet at the park near my place for a night walk. She was waiting by the fountain. She looked normal. Jeans, an oversized hoodie, messy hair. I felt a huge wave of relief. Finally, someone who didn't look like they were made in a factory. "Hey, I'm Chloe," she said. "Nice to meet you," I replied. "Nice to meet you," she said back. We started walking down the trail. The park was dead quiet. I tried to start a conversation, asking what she did for a living. "I work in the city," she said. 2 minutes later, I asked if she lived nearby. "I work in the city," she said. Exact same tone. Exact same volume. I brushed it off as nerves. Maybe she was just shy. But then we passed under a row of old street lamps. I looked down at our shadows on the pavement, and my heart nearly stopped. My shadow was fine. But Chloe's? It was wrong. Every time she walked under the light, her shadow would stretch out and grow these long, thin extra limbs. They looked like spider legs, twitching and reaching toward my own shadow. I stopped walking. She kept going for 3 steps, then froze. She didn't turn around. Her body just stayed perfectly still while her head spun 180 degrees to look at me. "I work in the city," she whispered. Suddenly, her eyes started to flicker. It wasn't a blink. It was like a dying light bulb, on and off, showing nothing but gray static behind her eyelids. Her jaw dropped open, and I heard the sound of a dial-up modem screaming from her throat. She stayed like that for 10 seconds. Then she snapped back. "So, do you live nearby?" she asked, like nothing happened. I didn't answer. I turned and ran. I didn't look back until I was inside my apartment with the deadbolt turned. The app buzzed in my pocket. Date to complete. Rating, satisfactory. The third match was Mike. By this point, my nerves were shot. I almost stayed home, but something pulled me to the dive bar we picked. Mike was already there, leaning against the bar with a cheap beer in his hand. He looked messy. He had a stain on his shirt and hair that clearly hadn't seen a comb all day. For the first time in a week, I wanted to cry with relief. "Hey, sorry I'm a bit of a wreck," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Work was hell today." He laughed, and it was a real, gravelly human sound. He didn't mimic me. He didn't have a seam behind his ear. He just talked about how his boss was a jerk and how he'd been craving a burger for 3 days. We sat in a corner booth, and for an hour, I forgot about the algorithm. I forgot about the porcelain skin and the shadows that didn't match. Mike was real. He bled. He sweated. He was normal. But then he looked at his phone. His face went pale. His hand started to shake so hard his beer sloshed over the side of the glass. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of pure, cold terror. He leaned across the table, his voice a frantic whisper. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "The app, it told me I had to come. It said if I didn't show up, it would find my sister." He looked around the bar like he was being hunted. Every time the door opened, he jumped. He wasn't one of the monsters. He was just like me, a human trapped in a game he didn't understand. "We have to go," he hissed. "Now." He stood up, but before we could move, the bar went silent. Every person in the room, the bartender, the old man at the jukebox, the couple in the back, stopped moving at the exact same time. They all turned their heads toward our booth. They didn't say a word. They just watched us with those wide, glassy eyes I'd seen on Elias. Mike grabbed my hand. His skin was warm and clammy. He was the only real thing in the room, and he was absolutely terrified. "Run," he whispered. After the bar, I lost Mike in the crowd. I didn't have time to look for him. The app buzzed again. Date 4. A girl named Sarah. She wanted to meet at a trailhead just outside of town for some stargazing. I should have stayed in my apartment. I should have smashed my phone. But the app wouldn't let me log out, and every time I tried to turn it off, my screen just flashed that silver pulse. I pulled into the dirt lot at 10 p.m. Sarah was leaning against an old tree. She looked like any other girl. Flannel shirt, boots, ponytail. "Glad you made it," she said. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. We started walking up the path into the thick pines. The deeper we went, the quieter the woods got. No crickets. No wind. Just the sound of our boots on the dry needles. "I love it out here," she said. "It's so quiet. My mom used to take me here." I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. But then she said it again. "My mom used to take me here." Same tone. Same pitch. Then her voice shifted. It dropped an octave. It sounded like my own mother's voice. "Go to bed, honey," she whispered. I stopped dead. "What did you just say?" Sarah turned around. In the moonlight, her face looked like wet clay. One eye was sliding down her cheek, and her jaw was stretching out, becoming long and jagged. She didn't have teeth anymore, just sharp, white splinters. "Go to bed, honey," she said again, but this time it sounded like my best friend from high school. She started to crawl toward me. Not on 2 legs, but on all 4s, her limbs snapping and popping like dry wood as they lengthened. She wasn't Sarah. She was just a voice box wrapped in skin, trying on every person I'd ever loved like a used coat. "Here," she growled, her voice now a mix of 5 different people screaming at once. I didn't wait to see what else she could mimic. I sprinted back toward the car, the sound of her heavy, irregular thuds right behind me. Every time she got close, she'd whisper a secret only I knew in a voice I recognized. I barely made it to the car. I locked the doors just as a long, pale hand slammed against the glass. It didn't have fingernails. It didn't even have skin. It was just raw, red muscle. I peeled out of that lot, leaving the thing screaming in my father's voice behind me in the dark. I didn't go home. I couldn't. If that thing in the woods knew my mother's voice, it probably knew my address too. I pulled into a brightly lit 24-hour diner, sat in the back corner, and pulled out my phone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to delete the app. I held the icon down, but the X never appeared. Instead, the screen just bled that silver pulse, faster and faster, like a heartbeat. I went to the app store to look it up. Nothing. No reviews, no developer, no record of it ever existing. I started scrolling through my call logs. Every single match, Elias, Chloe, Mike, Sarah, they all had the same area code. But when I looked closer, the numbers weren't right. They were too long. 13 digits. I typed one of the numbers into a search engine. The results made my blood run cold. The numbers weren't phone lines. They were coordinates for abandoned properties, old graveyards, and deep-sea trenches. And then I saw the patterns in the photos. In every single profile picture, if you zoomed in on the eyes, you could see a reflection. It wasn't a camera or a person. It was a black, empty room with a single, glowing silver light in the center. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the algorithm. We are learning your preferences. You like real. You like human. Processing. I realized then that the first 4 dates weren't just random monsters. They were prototypes. Each one was getting better, smoother, more convincing. The app was using me to train them. I looked at the permission settings for the app. It had access to everything. My microphone, my camera, my heart rate monitor, my GPS. It had been listening to me scream in the car. It had been feeling my pulse spike every time I got scared. I wasn't a user. I was a quality control tester. And the 5th date? That wasn't a match. That was the final product. The screen flickered one last time. Final match found. She is already at your house. I didn't go home. I stayed in that diner until the sun came up, thinking I was safe in the light. But the app didn't care about the sun. My phone vibrated one last time. No GPS coordinates this time. Just a picture of my own front door. Date 5 is waiting. Don't keep her standing in the hall. I drove back, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had a tire iron in my hand when I kicked the door open. The apartment was freezing. Every window was shut, but I could see my breath misting in the air. She was sitting on my sofa. She didn't look like Elias or the thing from the woods. She looked like me. Not a twin, it was me. She was wearing the same hoodie I had on. She had the same small scar on her chin from when I was 7. She even had the same nervous habit of chewing her thumbnail. "Who are you?" I choked out. She turned her head. Her movement was perfect. No lag. No clicking. No static. "I'm what you're looking for," she said. Her voice was my voice. It wasn't a recording. It was my soul, my pitch, my breath. "The algorithm is finished. It doesn't need to learn from you anymore." She stood up. She didn't have a scent of plastic or ozone. She smelled like my laundry detergent. She walked toward me, and for a second, I almost dropped the tire iron. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to believe she was real because being that lonely for that long makes you weak. Then I saw her hands. She reached out to touch my face, and her skin started to ripple. It wasn't melting, it was folding. Her fingers were trying to merge with mine, like 2 drops of water hitting each other. "The final offering isn't a date," she whispered, leaning into my ear. "It's a replacement." I swung the iron. It went right through her shoulder, but there was no blood. It felt like swinging a stick through thick, heavy smoke. She didn't scream. She just looked at the hole in her chest and watched it knit itself back together in seconds. "You can't delete me," she said, her voice layering over mine as I tried to scream for help. "I'm already synced." I didn't stay to see what else she could do. I backed out of the apartment, tripping over my own feet, and scrambled into the hallway. She didn't chase me. She just stood in the doorway, watching me with my own eyes, wearing my own smile. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. I hit the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. My lungs were burning. When I got to the street, the world felt wrong. The street lights weren't flickering. They were pulsing. That same silver rhythm from the app. I looked at the cars passing by. Every driver sat perfectly straight. None of them were looking at the road. They were all looking at me. I jumped into my car and floored it. I didn't have a plan. I just needed distance. I checked the rearview mirror. A black sedan pulled out behind me. Then another. They weren't speeding, they were just there, keeping the exact same distance. Every time I turned, they turned. My phone started screaming. Not a ringtone. It was a high-pitched, digital shriek that wouldn't stop even when I held the power button. The screen was white, blindingly bright, and then words started scrolling across the glass. Sinking. 90%. 95%. I realized the Great Escape wasn't about getting away from a person. It was about getting away from the signal. I saw a bridge over the river up ahead. The water was dark, deep, and cold. I didn't think. I just grabbed my phone, rolled down the window, and hurled it as hard as I could into the blackness. The screaming stopped instantly. The black sedan slowed down and pulled over to the curb. The streetlights went back to a steady, boring yellow. I pulled over a mile later, my chest heaving. I was shaking so hard I couldn't hold the steering wheel. I was free. The app was at the bottom of the river. But then I looked at my hands. The skin on my knuckles, it wasn't bruised from the fight. It was smooth. Too smooth. No pores. No hair. Just a pale, ivory texture that didn't feel like skin at all. It's been 6 months since I threw that phone into the river. I don't use apps anymore. I don't even use a smartphone. I bought an old flip phone from a thrift store. No GPS, no silver pulse, no algorithm. I moved to a new town, got a boring job at a warehouse, and stayed away from the dating scene. I thought I won. I really did. But lately things have started to feel off. It's the little things first. I'll be sitting at the dinner table and I'll reach for my glass of water. For a split second, I feel like I'm watching myself do it from across the room. Like there's a delay in the feed. This morning, I finally forced myself to look. Really look. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. I didn't blink. 1 minute. 2 minutes. My eyes didn't even get dry. They just stayed wide and glassy, reflecting the fluorescent light like 2 marble spheres. I leaned in closer. The skin around my jawline looked tight. I reached up and ran my thumb behind my left ear. There was a thin, pale seam. It felt like cold plastic. I tried to scream, but the sound didn't come from my throat. It was a low, mechanical hum, the sound of a microwave running in an empty kitchen. I looked down at the sink. My shadow wasn't moving with me. It was standing perfectly still, its long, thin arms reaching toward the corners of the room. The algorithm didn't find what I was looking for. It found what it needed. I'm not the narrator anymore. I'm the final product. I walked back into the living room and sat on the sofa. I folded my hands on my lap and waited. My phone, the old flip phone I thought was safe, started to vibrate on the coffee table. A new message from an unknown sender. Date 1 arrives in 42 seconds. Try to look human. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just sat there, perfectly still, waiting for the knock on the door.